bird's eye view can give a clear picture of the Scarboro Golf and Country Club, located just east of Toronto, north from the shores of Lake Ontario. This course was the scene of the 1947 Canadian Open Golf Championship, sponsored by the Royal Canadian Golf Association, the 38th renewal of this national sporting event. Since 1912, Scarboro has been the scene of many golf championships. It's one of Canada's most picturesque courses, and through it runs Highland Creek, crossing and paralleling many of the fairways. Here in 1940, Sam Snead scored one of his 3 victories in the Canadian Open. As our plane comes in over the fairways, we can appreciate to the full the wooded beauty of this mecca of the royal and ancient game. The 1947 Canadian Open Golf Championship was to prove that public golfing fever is at its peak. Never before in Canada had such large crowds gathered to see the stars perform. In 4 days, almost 30,000 golf enthusiasts from Canada and the United States jostled for a look at the idols of the fairways. They came by bus, by car, and on foot. Time was when golf held little interest for the public, but today the sport has developed mass appeal. The tournament hit the peak of the tourist season, and the huge parking areas were colorful with license plates from almost every state in the Union. The international interest in Canada's greatest golf spectacle was symbolized by the proud emblems of 2 nations flying from the Scarborough flagpole. All signs pointed to Scarborough, which, having entertained top golfers from all parts of the globe, erected this sign, giving the beeline distances to principal world centers. In this attractive and commodious clubhouse, members have swapped stories with all the top-notchers from Harry Vardon to Bobby Locke. Overlooking the rolling and winding fairways, the spacious clubhouse verandas offer excellent vantage points from which to view many of the holes. Some 200 top-ranking professionals and amateurs from the United States, Canada, South Africa, and Bermuda converged on Scarborough to battle a par 71 for the course. In 1936, he set a record of 271 strokes for the 72 holes, a mark which stood unchallenged until the final day of the 1947 tournament. The Seagram Gold Cup is one of the most beautiful of all sports trophies, standing 22 inches from base to top. The massive base of onyx contains a gold casket, within which is the inscribed parchment scroll of annual winners. 2 beavers act as supporters of this casket, and the Canadian coat of arms is beautifully executed on the front. The cup itself is of Grecian design and made of gold. The superlative workmanship and exquisite design make this trophy, which was made entirely in Canada, one of exceptional beauty, seldom seen in athletic trophies. Bob Gray, the home club professional, gets in a few practice licks before the tournament. Gray is rated one of the top pros developed in Canada. In addition to many other honors, he has led the Canadian pros home on more occasions than any other player in the Dominion, and holds the distinction of being the only Canadian to finish in the runner-up slot in recent years. Gray was only 2 strokes back of Sam Snead at Toronto Lambton in 1941, when the West Virginian won the Seagram Gold Cup, beating out Gray on the final 2 holes. Gray shows his specialty. Using his trusty dynamiter, he blasts one out of the deep bunker. A few putts to test out the lightning-fast greens. Now a chip shot or 2 to the unusual 19th practice green. On the day before the Open, several of the leading pros staged a golf clinic, wherein they demonstrated every shot in the game, aptly described by Lawson Little. Here, Freddie Hawes of New Orleans demonstrates some wood shots. Lou Worsham, the newly crowned American Open champion, displays his art at using the spoon or number 3 wood. Bobby Locke, the South African sensation, who had won 8 of the first 11 tournaments in which he had competed in the United States, appeared late at the clinic in practice garb, without his famous +4s, but with his familiar white cap and white shoes. Locke's style was carefully studied as he hits a few iron shots for the large gallery which attended the inaugural in Canada of this golf clinic. The camera has slowed down to give you a better look at the form of this South African, who has taken American golf by storm. 29 years old, Locke won the Irish Open tournament at the age of 17. Ellsworth Vines hies himself early to the practice fairway, and a large gallery watches this player who once dominated the tennis courts of the world and is now striving to do the same thing in golf. Very few people have hit the top in both golf and tennis, but Vines is well on his way to accomplishing this feat. Bobby Locke spends less time on the practice tee than almost any of the top stars, but he gets in a few minutes before his first round to sharpen up his game, taking each club in the bag in turn. One of the few remaining +4s wearers, Locke's attire is as distinctive as his golfing style. He proved to be the idol of the gallery on this, his first appearance in Canada, impressing the fans by his slow, deliberate method of attacking the game. A machine-like player, Locke just doesn't seem to know the meaning of stage fright or golf nerves. Locke arrived at Scarborough fresh from a thrilling playoff victory over Ed Porky Oliver in the Tam O'Shanter tournament in Chicago. The day before the Open, Locke teamed up with Tony Penna and George Shue, two top American pros, and Jim Beck, a Canadian amateur, for a few holes. The magic of Locke's name drew a large pre-tournament gallery. Tony Penna drives one off the first tee. George Shue, one of the brightest of the young touring pros, plays an iron shot to the green. Bobby Locke pitches one to the compact 7th green from a very bad lie. Locke tries out his rusty old wooden-shafted putter, a putter which was the keynote to his success in the American tournament. Locke says he was offered 5 cents for it once, but it's worth many thousands of dollars to him now. He's had this putter for over 20 years, and he rarely misses, but that was one exception. Waiting for their call to the first tee for their opening round, some of the players make a final test of the all-important putting stroke. Lawson Little, holder of the Canadian Open record, putts, while Vic Gizzi walks away. Bobby Locke chats with the veteran Craig Wood, who won both the Canadian Open and the United States Open before the war closed down these tournaments. Younger editions of two famous golfing names. Their fathers are former Canadian Open winners, Walter Hagen Jr. and Joe Kirkwood Jr. The gallery follow in behind Hagen and Kirkwood, doubtless thinking of days when their famous fathers drew tremendous crowds at their every appearance in the Canadian Open. Joe Kirkwood Jr. pitches one to the 3rd green. This young man of many talents plays the role of Joe Palooka in the movies, and he's rated a comer in golf circles. The opening day, the threesome which drew the major share of the crowd was Bobby Locke, Clayton Hefner from North Carolina, and Stan Leonard of Vancouver. Leonard had finished one stroke back from a two-way tie in 1946 at Montreal when George Fazio won the playoff from Dick Metz. Leonard and Hefner have driven off, and the crowd swarm in behind them as they head down the fairway. The treacherous par 3 4th hole, the crowd struggling for one of the many vantage points on the hill. The creek parallels the right side of the fairway. The players, mingling with the crowd, make their way over a bridge leading to the green. Locke, Hefner, and Leonard finishing a terrific round, all carding subpar scores in the 60s. Hefner a 67, Locke a 68, and Leonard a 69. None of these scores was good enough to lead the tournament on the first day, however, as young Johnny Palmer came in with a 66, 5 under par. The big threesome talk with the press and sign autographs before they're able to make their way to the clubhouse. Hefner was busy autographing scorecards. Bobby Locke, too, was surrounded by his followers. The big threesome on the first 2 rounds, Bobby Locke, Clayton Hefner, and Stan Leonard. Jules Hewitt and Ellsworth Vines tee off, while Vic Gizzi takes the role of a spectator. The 3rd fairway at Scarborough, a huge elm tree standing squarely in the middle. A large gallery followed this big threesome as they walk up the fairway. The threesome comprises Bob Gray, the home pro, Freddie Wood from Vancouver, and Ralph Hutchinson, a popular teaching pro from Chicago, who waves to the cameraman. Bobby Locke on his second round, which saw him finish with a 66 to add to his previous 68. But even this total of 134 still left the South African in second place, 3 strokes behind Ed Porky Oliver, who burned up the course on the second round with a record-smashing 63 to add to an earlier 68. Lou Worsham, the American Open champion, hits one on the tight 7th tee. Worsham walks across the narrow bridge from the 7th tee with 2 young tournament stars, Bill Neri from California and George Payton from Virginia. Starter Bill Cummings sends on their way Hugh Borthwick of Toronto, Craig Wood, a former Canadian Open golf champion, and Glenn Teal. Ed Porky Oliver starts out on his final round, holding down second place along with Nick Wisnock with scores of 202, 1 stroke behind Bobby Locke. Locke had fired a third round 67, while Oliver took a par 71, which gave Bobby the lead. Porky Oliver played his final round with Bob Gray and Ed Fergall. Gray was the lone Canadian still in the running, being in third place, only 2 strokes off the lead. Ed Fergall was 5 strokes from the top. He's one of the most amazing of golfers, playing with the handicap of 1 bad arm, injured when he was a boy. Fergall lines up a long putt on the 3rd green. It rolls up to the cup, stops on the lip, and drops in. Bobby Fair, a Scarboro junior star, just 17 years old, chips one from behind the 3rd green. Bobby Fair followed up his Canadian Open play by winning the Ontario Junior Championship. Someone is stealing Bobby Locke's thunder with the +4s. It's Dick Metz. In 1946, Metz finished in a tie with George Fazio for first place at Montreal, but he lost out in the playoff. Dick Metz hits one on the 1st tee. Jimmy Thompson, the longest hitter in golf, booms one down the 1st fairway. Playing with Dick Metz and Jimmy Thompson is the Maple Leaf hockey star and a top amateur golfer, Bill Ezanicki, a native of Winnipeg. The caddies of all the players wear numbers on their backs so the fans can identify their favorites. The 17th hole with the creek running across the fairway, 220 yards from the elevated tee. Bobby Locke, with victory in his grasp, drove over the creek and pitched onto the green. The ever-enlarging gallery line up along the creek bank. Locke walks onto the green. He marks his ball as Nick Wisnock, the leading amateur in this tournament, lines up his putt. Bobby Locke sinks his putt for a birdie 3, touches his cap to acknowledge the applause in the now familiar Locke fashion, and walks slowly off the green. The South African is headed for victory. The crowd move up the 18th fairway. Second shots have been played to the green. Bobby Locke needs only a par 4 to give him a 67, 4 under par, and his 4th successive round in the 60s. Locke's only rival now, Ed Porky Oliver, is 3 holes back of this big threesome, and a 67 for Locke would mean Oliver would have to birdie the last 2 holes to get a 66. Oliver still had a chance, but a very slim one. The gallery sense this is the final act in the big golf drama. The public choice is coming in, and the fans are all set to see the crowning of a new champion on this final green. Thousands are seated around the green, occupying every possible vantage point. Locke missed his first putt, but he has almost a sure par 4. Bobby Locke's final putt has been sunk. He picks up the ball and tosses it into the crowd where it's grabbed by someone as a souvenir. Bobby Locke has finished his final round with a 67 and a total score of 268, 16 strokes under par. Some of the crowd leave the green. Thousands more stay to watch Oliver come in, but his chances are gone. Porky parred the 17th, leaving him needing an eagle 2 on the last hole. He took a par 4 and finished 2 strokes behind the winner in second place. The leading amateur was Nick Wisnock, and the top Canadian, Bobby Locke, walks into the clubhouse. The fans wait behind for the presentation ceremony. Cameramen, a battery of them, are on hand to send pictures of the event to all parts of the golfing world. At last, Bobby Locke the new Canadian Open and Seagram Gold Cup winner, nattily attired, still in +4s, and wearing a blue sports coat, enters the enclosure. He's congratulated by the tournament officials. Radio microphones tell the story of the 1947 Canadian Open to listeners throughout Canada and the United States. George Lang, president of the Royal Canadian Golf Association, introduces the winner and presents him with a check for $2,000 for winning the Canadian Open. Mr. Froud Seagram of the House of Seagram congratulates the new champion on winning the Seagram Gold Cup, which Locke will hold for 1 year. Mr. Seagram presents Bobby Locke with a gold miniature of the trophy for his permanent possession. Dr. Matthews, chairman of the Royal Canadian Golf Association Tournament Committee, brings Bobby Locke back to the microphone. Locke tells the assembled fans how thrilled he is to win the Canadian Open and promises, if it's at all possible, to be back to defend his title next year when the championship will be held in Vancouver. Admirers hoist Bobby Locke onto their shoulders and carry him away. Ed Porky Oliver, whose score of 270 wasn't quite good enough to match Locke's record-smashing 268, accepts the second prize check and looks it over carefully. The popular American star is also carried away. The Canadian Open Golf Championship of 1947 is history, and Bobby Locke of South Africa is the winner of the third most important championship in the world and proud possessor of the coveted Seagram Gold Cup.